How's it, guys? Welcome back to another cracking installment of The Matt Brown Show. Today I have none other than two very infamous characters from two very prominent and emerging continents. One more emerging and developed than the other. But I've got Howard Mann, the President of Business Brickyard, live in the studio from New York. Please welcome him with our live audience. And then we have, to my right, Craig, the CEO of Cradle Technologies, one of the top 12 startups on the African continent. Whoop, whoop.
Thanks, Matt.
So, Mr. Collins, how are you today?
I'm great, thanks.
Are you nervous?
Yeah. No, not at all.
I'm fucking nervous. Can I tell you why I'm nervous?
Why are you nervous?
Is that this is going to be a show that's not what I suppose most of my listeners have come to expect by now, where I kind of interview Craig. Actually, the bit of context for this show, Howard, this is now your third time, I believe, on the Matt Brown Show.
That's true.
It is true. It's all deadly.
I'm waiting, trying to get a jacket at the fifth visit.
Yeah, so just to that point, so if you guys don't know, I'll let Howard introduce himself. But today we're going to do a player-coach type session. Howard's doing some amazing work over in the US. If you haven't heard why and exactly in what context, go and have a look for Howard Mann in the previous show listing. But today we're actually going to do a live coaching session. The setup here is that Craig, I wasn't lying when I said he's the founder of Granite Warehouse Management Solutions, which has just been accepted to Grindrod Knife Capital's Accelerator.
Grindstone,
yeah. My bad, not Grindrod. Grindrod's bad. Grindstone's much better. Anyhow, so legitimately one of the most exciting startups currently in play on the African continent with global ambitions. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up a coaching experience just to kind of demonstrate for entrepreneurs around the world, how does one go from A to B? We all, I think, have this romantic idea about scale. Scale is bloody hard. Digital Kung Fu is looking to open an office in America next year. It's either going to cripple the business or it's going to be a huge success. We'll find out soon enough. Nonetheless, it's one of the quintessential challenges. And that's what we're really going to explore today as a team, which is to use Craig and Cradle, who has a product, which does have product market fit, and is looking to scale. And we're going to rely on Howard's expertise over there and guidance around how does one approach really scaling up in America as a South African-based startup initially. Yes? So I'm going to hand over to Howard. Just Howard, if you can give us the headline, mate. Like, who are you and why are you such a rock star?
That's just because you just said so.
Yes.
So I'm a player coach, and what that means is I think a lot of business coaching is broken because business issues and problems and things that need tackling don't fit always neatly into a 45-minute or an hour-long phone call every other week or every week. And much as you could think about talk therapy, I think there's too much in coaching. There's too much talking and not enough doing. So the goal with my work is to figure out the underlying issues in the business, the core thing that is stopping it from getting it to where it needs to be, and then not just waiting for the entrepreneur who is busy and buried deep working in their business, but to help them, to roll up my sleeves and help them get those few key things done so momentum can take place.
Awesome. Craig?
Sounds fantastic.
It does sound great.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to learn more of that. I'm like pseudo being coached here as well, even though I'm saying you're the one that's being coached. But so let's introduce Craig. Craig, what's the headline backstory that you really want to share at this time?
Well, I think, we have been in business for about 18 years, and initially it started off small. It started off with some barcoding equipment and some labels, and really the Cradle brand is about barcoding systems, barcoding equipment, and consumables. And then in 2007, we started doing some packaged software. I'm a software programmer by trade, and I realized custom software is really crap. So package software was the way to go. So we started work on Granite warehouse management system. And 8 years down the line, we have 100 sites. It's quite interesting because in year one, you have one site. In year two, you have 3 sites. And then it just starts growing. And last year, we did 38 sites. This year, we're on about 20. It's a bit of a slowdown. But we also have a site in the US and a site in the UK. And we are really growing. And we've got a great product. It's in version 3.4, great fit to market. And we're really after mid-market customers.
Okay, well, there you have it. So let's get into the coaching itself. So I'm going to hand over to Howard just to kind of lead the kind of thinking from here. Over to you, Howard.
Okay, great. So Craig, give me a sense, and so everybody understands who your clients are. Obviously, you make warehousing software, just to oversimplify it. But who are your customers?
Right. So the intention is always to stay out of the corporate game, and we're really after that mid-market sweet spot where the customer's got a mid-market ERP system, for example, Sage. They are able to take decisions themselves. They don't necessarily have to go to tender, and there are manufacturers and distribution, and they have a strong requirement for efficiency and productivity in the warehouse and very strong requirements for traceability. So our system's really good at traceability, and as a result, the customers span across sort of probably 40 different industries, and everything from timber to medical to food traceability, batch and expiry date, things like we even do tracking of timber in forests. But it really is about warehousing. So that timber comes into the warehouse, and the customers are able to be told exactly what they've got in the warehouse. And a couple of success stories are one of our first sites. Whenever a customer phoned in, they would go and walk down into the warehouse to see if they actually had the stock. Whereas now the stock is 100% accurate, 3,500 bundles of timber, and they can promise the customer anything they want. So, it's about giving the efficiency to the customer, getting that data accurate, and providing the normal benefit for WMS, but in a mid-market space.
Are your customers, when you win them, are they leaving a current warehousing software package, or are they going from something that was on pencil and pad and Excel sheets to an actual warehouse system? Yeah,
predominantly pencil and pad, very seldom leaving a WMS. And in the cases where they are leaving a WMS, it's been more like a cheap inventory system or something that hasn't worked for them. But by far the majority is new opportunity because the customer is growing. And that's really our value proposition. The customer is growing, he's starting to see problems with scale, and he needs to get some accuracy and efficiency and traceability in the warehouse. Traceability is a big driver as well, especially places where they have problems with batch and expiry date and things like that. We really, it's a sweet spot for us, and it's a big demand for our customers. And then our pricing is really well below what the majors offer. So if they're a growing, scaling business, then that's where they're looking.
Okay. So and is it delivered in terms of how quickly you can install it? Is it delivered through the cloud? Is it installed? Do they have to manage the software themselves?
Yeah. So in most cases, it is installed, but we manage it for them remotely. And one of the reasons while we have a strategy to transition it to cloud, the reality is that these smaller industrial warehouses and industrial sites don't have the internet connectivity that you require for cloud, especially in this country. So we currently probably have about, say, 70% of our stuff on-premise. There's probably a few in the cloud, and mainly hosted servers, not true cloud. And the other thing is that the ERP systems that we integrate into are also typically on-premise at the moment.
So am I correct to say that now that you have some scale, you've got an installed base, you're in multiple countries, you have a healthy size customer base, that the path to here to 10,000 customers is about sales predominantly?
Absolutely, it's sales and staffing in the various countries. And we have multiple routes to sale. Obviously, we have route through business partners. So our goal is to get the lead through the ERP vendors' business partners, and we do pretty well in that space. But they very seldom want to implement, and they very seldom have the domain knowledge to even talk about warehousing. So the first thing they do is they hear about a warehousing opportunity, they call us up, we go with them to help them sell it. They're retaining the customer, and we're implementing for them.
So to just take a step back, but to get from where you are to 10,000, I realize that's not a tomorrow goal, but one of the things to start to think about, and I say this having gone through your website, and as you talk about warehouse systems and you talk about people need traceability, there is a need to the goal should be how do you reduce the amount of time that a prospect understands what you're offering and why they should care.
Right.
So if they look at your current offering where you're offering, even if it's better, they don't know this at that point, a variety of service offerings, and essentially they're going to bucket you as a warehouse management system software.
Correct.
Part of the decision process is going to be, well, there's a lot of other warehouse management system software. And the longer they're in that churn of, is this the right software? Well, there's other software. And these guys also say that they're lower priced. These guys also say that they're easier to use. These guys also say that traceability is one of the things. Plus, they'll tell them that they do 10 other things, whether they do or not. You're then in a battle as opposed to a buying discussion. So if the main piece and the main sort of beacon for the company to get from where you are now to eventually get to 10,000 is to think about how do those sales happen in an ever shorter way, and separately from an operational standpoint, how do I install faster? How do I train faster? How do I make everything more efficient to keep pulling friction out of both sides of the equation? So I think to try to simplify how you think about the business, there's two sides to the business. There's a side to the business that's sole activity is to attract and win the right clients for you.
Yeah.
And so there's a series of activities that will happen there to how do you get people to quickly understand why you,
right?
And then what are the steps to take so that they sign on the line and begin using the product? And then the only other half of the business to protect your profit margins is what do I need in the business to deliver what I promised to that client and to delight them so that they'll tell other people about me.
Right.
And so the goal there is to remove anything else that isn't in the attract and win or the delight and exceed expectations side of the business.
Okay.
And a lot of businesses get in trouble because they start adding on lots of different things that aren't in those buckets. So for now, since your main leverage point is to attract and win, the goal is how do we figure out how to describe your software in a way that makes people understand immediately why they need it. And because it's software, and it's software that for anybody they're going to be worried that's going to be complicated. How do you make them understand that they can use this without it bringing their operations to a halt?
So the good news is we've actually been working with Craig on defining what that is. What's the line, guys, in the Chris, what's the line for the granite thing? It's no, not get it right with granite. It's the thing that's for less than a whatever. What is it?
Less than a warehouse supervisor.
Yeah. So
I
we've
saw that in the story. So everybody knows that you wrote up a script, sent me some material. So I'm not flying blind, completely blind here. But
lies, you are flying blind. You're just a genius, mate.
but when I went through your materials, and that doesn't jump out at me.
Right.
And I want us to just take a step back to think about what in some of the things you said in the beginning, Craig, there's the nuggets of what the results that I want. I'm not interested in, I don't have a software problem. There's
correct.
Seth Godin always tells a story that people don't, when they go to the store to buy a 1/4-inch drill bit, they're not going to buy a 1/4-inch drill bit. They need a 1/4-inch hole, right?
Yeah.
So what's sort of missing here is what is the result. You touched on it in places, but it's gathered together with what you do, and you're not alone in this. Everybody does this. We want to desperately talk about what we do and not the results that we create, and then work backwards into how we'll fulfill those results.
Right.
So the results you want to create are what? If we're sitting talking to a CEO who's made the decision to use your software, or a warehouse manager who's put his job on the line by choosing your software, and a year after it's done,
right?
What's happened to their business?
Okay, so the inventory accuracy has dramatically improved. The accuracy of shipping outbound has dramatically improved. So we're not shipping wrong product anymore. We have accurate control over our expiry dates and batches, and we can find and track any stock in the warehouse. So with full traceability, we know who touched the stock, when they touched it, when it arrived, where it is. So we're really giving them control of the warehouse. And we're really not after...
So hang on, I want to stop you there for a quick second, because I want to make sure that we speak in simple, not... Because you know this software because you wrote it, and it's deep in it. Now we're talking to somebody who's a warehouse manager, who's probably a bit afraid of software, probably a bit worried that it might take their job, or maybe take the job of some of their friends in the warehouse. Just whether it is or not, that's the mindset that they're in. And so I want to try to boil down, I'll tell you just a quick anecdote to illustrate the point. So I used to own a freight logistics company, and when we sold it, there was some other companies that the company we sold to also had acquired, and we were all sitting around a table talking about tracking and tracing, and we could put APIs together, and we're going to stitch the systems together, and we're going to do all of this stuff. And a guy at the end of the table said, "Guys, this is really exciting, but when my clients call me, the only thing they care about is where is my stuff."
Yeah.
And that idea, he's right. How we figured out how to answer that question and ways to make him feel comfortable that he always knew where his stuff was is really what he cared about.
Right.
And you have some of that, right? So rather than, inventory control, it's know where everything is in your warehouse by glancing at your screen or your phone.
Sure.
Being able to track and trace every shipment out of your warehouse all the way until it's handed to your customer.
Right.
Is what they really want. And if you go down that road, what happens to a business that can quickly glance? So what's the byproduct of having better inventory control is what to the business?
Well, at the end of the day, there's two main things. It's the customer gets what they ordered, so you're removing the error, and that means happier customers. And then making sure that you don't have lost sales because you know where the stuff is and you got it in the warehouse. So if you know what you've got, you know where it is, you can fulfill the customer's requirement.
True, but what also when they've been working with not a sophisticated warehouse system and doing it on the back of a pad.
Yeah.
My experience is that they keep too much or too little inventory, which is expensive. Mm-hmm. Not having the right inventory, not having systems that have them refill inventory at just the right time is expensive. Holding inventory is a curse for anybody. That warehouse, holding inventory in a warehouse is is just soaked up cash flow. So the ability for you to optimize them having just the right things. You can not reorder the things, or not manufacture or not reorder the things that are not selling well. You can tell them to increase the production on the things that are selling well. You can take an order coming in and immediately start to produce things. There's an enormous efficiency that should be measurable all the way to the bottom line.
Sure.
If that makes sense. So if you if you can work your way down to what that is, the conversation that you'll be able to have changes from it being, here's what we do. We have a WMS system in 40 locations, and you can boil down to the nugget that you got to, which is there's a key here, which is there's a price discussion where you're saying you can have this all for the cost of a warehouse manager. But if the warehouse manager gets wind of that, he's not going to be a fan because they're going to hear, well, then they're not going to need me.
Yeah.
Why am I going to support this software?
It's one of the reasons I say warehouse supervisor. The warehouse manager's job is safe. But sure, I get it, yeah.
Right? So before you get to that point, which is one of the features in terms of cost, in order for somebody to land on your site, or you meet them, or they hear about you, or somebody's pitching it, what is the core nugget that makes them say, wow, I got to see this?
Look, I think it's difficult to describe that, because in many cases, our customers, because they haven't got anything, they're battling with inefficiencies. They're battling with not being able to get the stuff out and not getting the stuff out accurately, with complaints, etc. So what they do is they come to market looking for a warehouse system. And what they often do is they approach the person who's sold them their accounting system. Either that, or they go online and look for warehouse management systems. But especially in the mid-market.
But you're, I agree, but if you want to scale, you're going to need to go out to folks that are using the paper and pad. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, it's not totally broken for them.
Right.
And you need to break it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're saying, listen, it's not ideal, but I've gotten used to putting out fires. I've gotten used to not knowing exactly. I'm used to sending somebody out to go search for that thing in the warehouse because I don't know where it is. I've gotten used to clients complaining that we don't have good traceability.
Right.
And you need to have a conversation with them and trigger and instigate and agitate a conversation with them that's not going to do it anymore.
Right.
Yeah, right? That this way of operating that you may think is less expensive than getting software, that you may think is less painful than putting in a warehouse software tool, it's no longer true. That it's actually not only for the less the cost of a warehouse supervisor, but you are impeding your ability to grow.
Right.
If you are having the conversation, let me ask it a different way. When you've gone in, think about a recent client win that you've had, a good one, mm-hmm. one that you would consider, boy, if every client was like this client, we would just be happy as could be. What was the conversation that you found yourself in with this client that made it an easy win? What were you talking about? What was the conversation in the room where sales often get made that made it a winning conversation? Yeah,
I think the ones that are easy wins are the ones where they already realize that they have a problem and the demand is there. They're feeling enough pain. I think of one of the recent ones. They're a pharmaceutical. They knew they needed a system because they weren't compliant, and they went to their accounting vendor. The accounting vendor said, "Look, the package doesn't have a WMS, but Cradle's got this great system that integrates tightly with their Sage system." And that led them to us, and then we satisfied their requirements for traceability, etc. So they knew they had pain, they knew they needed to do something. And it's not really a fair one. I think you've hit the nail on the head, though, because if I look at the number of leads we have versus close, we have a ton of leads. We're really not battling with getting leads in, but the close is the tough conversation. And it's, I think you've said it exactly. How do we tell them that their paper's not cutting it? How do we break it? Because that's the problem. They often say to us, look, at our last stock take, we wrote off 500,000 or whatever it was, but that's not enough pain. They don't feel an operational pain where something's not working. And in the pharmaceutical case, they did have an operational pain because they weren't compliant. So I need to find that pain that they're suffering when they're using paper. And often that's the order's not going out correctly. The customer's getting the wrong stock.
So you're going to have your current level of growth and success responding to people that have self-identified that they've crossed the pain threshold and need a warehouse system.
Yeah.
And you're going to win a certain percentage of those discussions based on price, based on features.
Yeah.
But they're now actively realizing that they need to do it. Your scale will come from telling a whole larger group of people that they have a problem that is costing them money, it's costing them clients, it's causing them to not be able to grow, and it's causing them to get killed by a competitor who's got better systems than they do.
Right.
So you want to start to have conversations and think about how can I have your winning conversation is to show somebody and think about all the different ways that you can prove it. And I think you could probably prove it in terms of holding lower inventory and the bottom line cost of that, the improved cash flow from not having to spend so much on holding inventory, to the cost of missed orders, to the cost of missed delivery, to the cost of how many people are answering phone calls and then scurrying around searching for orders, which are more soft costs. People just think, well, that's just what they do. Why would I, that's not really a cost. That's just what they do all day, right? But you have to prove to them that those activities aren't winning activities.
Right.
And then how do you condense that down to, and I'm brainstorming with you, and it's our first conversation. But there's a conversation to be had for, the pad and the Excel sheet and how people are running their inventory, and what happens after they start using your system. And then I think the other hurdle to get over is to reduce their fear that putting in a software tool is going to be more difficult than their paper and pad. Sure. Or the Excel spreadsheet they have, or some, who knows what little system or things that they've had that they work. This pad system's worked for me for 20 years. You're going to run into people who,
of course,
I know where everything is in this warehouse. Just ask me. I don't need a fancy system, right? That's what you're up against.
Sure.
So, properly implemented, they're going to go from 0 to 100, your ideal customer.
Yeah.
They're going to go from no tracking and tracing, no warehouse management, no barcodes, nothing except, looking around and seeing what they have in the warehouse, to really being an efficient operation that will allow them to double and triple and quadruple what they can do.
Okay.
And so the goal is to instigate that conversation.
Right.
Yeah, the interesting thing with you is that there's multiple angles to this, and that's kind of what we've done. It's what you're saying, right? So, because depending on who you're speaking to, and just depending on the context of the business, like you got your 100% legacy business doesn't even know what software looks like, and they've only ever done like pencil and paper sort of thing, versus and this is from your story brand. I'm trying to get my guys to print it out for me, but basically what I recall is another context for business for you, Craig, is you have a potential client who has scaled quickly. And you find these businesses and either they have a compliance issue or they just don't have the processes and systems in place in order to enable scale. So inevitably how that manifests is that you have warehouses in chaos, pissed off staff, unhappy working conditions, etc. And those are the kind of pain points, I guess, is what you're trying to, I suppose, say, Howard, is that Craig needs to be able to address and then articulate, but then also to say, well, listen, this is where you are. Here's the pain where you are today. Here's how we alleviate that pain and how things could be. You know what I mean? So,
almost, yes. But almost working backwards from the last part you said. So I think you want to paint a picture of how things could be.
Yeah.
Right? So if you have a conversation with somebody and through a series of questions, what would happen to your business if you knew you could glance at your phone and know everything that you had in stock when a customer calls to order it or when you just want to know where something is? What if you could optimize your inventory?
Yeah.
What if you could know to the minute, to the second, or however the software works, when something's being delivered, both when an inventory is coming in and orders are going out?
Sure.
What would happen to your business? And what would happen to your business if you could have this in 30 days and your staff would be up and running on it with 1 week's worth of training? I'm making those things up.
Oh, they're quite real.
Okay, so and if the training is a week, then your long-term goals from the retain and delight side of handling the business is to how do we keep improving our training tools? How do we make the software easier to deploy? Yeah. And so on one side of the business, you just keep talking about what life looks like.
Yes.
When somebody decides to make this decision.
Yeah.
So that they feel it, so that you can then say to them, this is what we're offering. How do you know where something is today? And you're having that conversation, and you're in a conversation about, you're in the business of making people's warehouses efficient so that the business can grow.
100%.
Right? The fact that you do it with warehousing software is how you do it.
Sure.
But why you do it is that an efficient warehouse saves a company money, allows them to delight their customers, and allows them to grow. That as good as their pad and paper system is, they're going to hit a ceiling.
Sure.
And then things are going to start breaking down. It's going to cost them more, and it's going to cripple the business. And that's the conversation that you want to have. So if you can come down with the nuggets that agitate somebody to understand the business that they could have, and for the sake of this discussion, in 30 days with a week's worth of training,
sure,
at a cost less than hiring one warehouse supervisor.
Yeah.
What's stopping you from doing it? If I've now articulated that you could have this, and so the days of, I'm just writing marketing copy here with you, but the days of taking 6 months and blowing up your business to install a warehouse management system are over.
Correct.
You can have these things in 30 days and have your staff trained and excited about using this software in 7 days at the cost of less than a warehouse supervisor.
Yeah.
Let us, where do you sign?
Sure.
Basically, right? Now you can go out into the market, not just for people who are in pain, but you can show them, you have to show them the pain that they're in.
Yeah.
Right. I remember years ago when I would have to go hire somebody, and I would reach out to somebody that was sort of a goal hire. And their initial reaction to a lot of those types of dream hires that you're trying to pull away from somebody are, I'm very happy here. And I would always say, that's fine. Let's just meet for a cup of coffee or grab some lunch. And in the course of the lunch, I would describe to them the vision that I had of the opportunity that I was offering them and the kind of life they would have working with my company. And we'd leave with them often saying, I really appreciate the conversation, but I'm very happy with where I am, and we'd shake hands. Now they go back to their office, and somehow the lighting's not the same. They don't feel exactly right. And everything's not as rosy as they thought, because they now have an alternate opportunity floating in their head.
Yeah.
And within a couple of weeks, in the majority of the cases, they'd call up and say, can we talk a bit more about that?
Yeah.
So the goal of your goal of marketing is to plant the seeds in their mind that life as they have it, even though they've grown comfortable with it, even though it's their normal,
yes,
actually isn't as great as they think.
So that's, you go ahead.
Yeah. Matt's been working with us on some marketing around this, and a lot of the stuff we've done has been showing them what the problem is. We actually need to possibly put more emphasis on showing them where they can be.
That's an interesting route, eh?
Yeah, because that's really what we've been missing. And Howard, you're right. We need to paint the picture that gives them hope, rather than saying, well, these are the problems you solve.
Right, because people don't, in order for you, if you present the problems that they have and the problems that you solve, they're going to have to admit that they're not running their operation right.
Right.
And you're going to come smack up into their ego.
Very cool. Absolutely.
And there are some people who will be self-aware enough to say, you're right, and I don't know how to run my warehouse, and I'm not really good about running my business. But you're asking business owners to say, you're right, I have no idea how to run my business, and I'm running it inefficiently. Thanks for pointing it out to me. Right?
Cool. Okay.
As opposed to, you're probably not aware that this system exists, and how easy it is to install, and how easy it is to learn, and what your business will be like. And in doing so, we're going to make you, Mr. CEO, you, Mr. Warehouse Manager, a rock star for finding it.
Right.
It's very different than saying you have no idea how to run a warehouse. The way you're running the business right now is costing you money. You're doing lousy service to your clients, and I'm going to fix it. That's a harder conversation to have. You're asking somebody to swallow a whole lot of pride.
Howard, just in your experience, I love the thinking. This is really rad. Just in your experience, obviously having coached, I don't know how many fucking people you've coached, but a lot, more than me. But what in your experience do you find psychologically humans respond to most? Is it the carrot or the stick? Or
it's the carrot, but in this case, it's not necessarily the carrot. It's what they respond to from we're talking just in a sales and marketing standpoint, is that they don't want to feel sold to. You just want to have a conversation about what their business could be.
Yeah.
If you can put there's psychological studies around, if you can ask somebody what the ideal state of their business is going to be in X number of years, and they can describe it to you, and you can help them describe it to you in vivid detail, in meaningful detail. Not that we're going to have a bigger business or whatever, but I'm going to have this much revenue. We're going to have this many customers, and I'm going to make this much money personally, and I'm going to take this much vacation, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. That they will then connect you to that vision of their future. And once you've done that, they will do business with you. I think there's some ridiculous, the study was the ridiculous percentage of people that will then do business with you. People that won't ask that question, on the others, answer that question, will not do business with you. There's no trust.
Craig, did I tell you that Howard is going to be my marketing partner over there in the States?
Well, I'll tell you, there's gold there. There's gold there, I'll tell you.
So I think you just have to you have to sit down and think about, all right, how do I have that conversation? How do I instigate it so people want to have that conversation with me? But how do I tell the CEOs, which is that your target market is either CEOs or warehouse managers, maybe it's different depending on the size of the company.
Yeah.
you're going to have to paint a picture that's about the future of their business, and that's going to wind up in their pocket for a CEO. And that there's this impediment that's holding them back. And rather than point out that they've been too stupid to get a warehouse managing system and operating it with a paper and pad has not been the way to go, that's knocking them down. If you can just say to them, there's two levels here. There's telling them about the future of the business, and then you have to overcome people's deeply held concerns about putting in a sophisticated piece of software, right? This is not like just adding an app to your phone. This is software that's going to touch orders, their inventory, their deliveries, their systems. There's barcode tracking that's going to create more anxiety. And so I think your other half of your messaging has to tackle the other fear. So, here, the bigger companies here all put in SAP as their software system. And ask anybody about putting SAP, and they'll immediately tell you a war story about how it took a year and a half and almost killed the business.
Sure.
Right? So people's perceptions are that this is yes, efficiency would be great, but it's going to cause more harm than good. So if you can, part of the retain and delight side of your business is to say, how quickly can we deploy?
Yeah.
And how easy is this for people to learn? Just look at, in the project management space, Basecamp, which is, everybody likes to point to Basecamp, but Basecamp gets to say, this is super easy, super intuitive. We do all kinds of things in our software that makes it easy for the person that's at the dock door to use. Big fat buttons, big colorful buttons. Our training is incredible. People will be up and running on this in days, and knock out that fear. Then the only conversation that's left for you to have is price and how quickly can you do it.
Yeah.
Craig, do you have any comments? Because I want to dive into sort of how it would approaching America specifically.
Sure. Yeah, I think just on that, we do spend quite a lot of time on the delight side of the business. So one of our sort of mottos is that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. We really do keep it simple, and we focus on that. I also try and manage complexity out of the project by saying, let's delay certain things that are complex until your people have got a handle on the basics, get it right and start getting some benefits. Then we can start tweaking and adding complexity. So as a result, we can, often within sort of the second week of signing, we can deliver the inbound processes, and we really focus on getting something down as quickly as possible, so that they can start using it, they can start feeling comfortable, and then you start to get the user buy-in, and users even starting to advise or say, can we do this? Can we do this? And that's really where you get buy-in.
Right. So the first picture you're painting for them is what life is like for them from what matters to them.
Okay.
Not just happy customers that doesn't mean anything to them. Know where everything is in your warehouse.
Yeah.
Your customers will know where everything is on their order. You're no more wasted inventory, no more lost stuff, no more this, that, right? And then the second level is, and you get to have all this
quickly.
Right. And there's a narrative around,
Yeah.
I know what you think about putting in sophisticated software, and so do we, and here's what we do. Right?
Sure. Okay.
Cool. Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
So good to know we're not completely off base. That would have been embarrassing. But cool. Let's talk about America. Hey, boom, boom. The land of the free. Hey?
Right. The home of the Trump.
The home of the Trump. Trumpster. The man himself. Yeah. So let's look. I mean, how does one approach America, Howard? I mean, I know it's a very broad question. Let's pick a state. Let's start there. You're not going to go everywhere, right?
Well, does one pick a state? We're saying we have an existing site in Miami, and they have expanded the warehouse into Dallas and LA. But the reality is, where do I start? Just going to one state is like an entire country.
I think yes, but so first I've traveled around quite a bit both professionally and speaking engagements, but also working with companies all around. And so the first thing to dispel a bit is that there is a massive difference in how companies operate around the world, or even how they operate in South Africa relative to the United States. The non-automated warehouses in the United States look and behave and operate exactly like the non-automated warehouses anywhere else you want to go.
Sure.
Right? I'm talking. They're using paper and pad. They're sending somebody out to go hunt for that package up in a rack in a warehouse that nobody can find. The same way that they're doing it anywhere else. The main issue I think that you'd have. So the problems are the same. Conversations that you want to have are the same. Your solution is going to be the same. You already have it installed in the United States. So anything related to currency or things relative to that, you've solved. So the issues that the added layer that you're going to have to solve is, I don't know that I want to have a software company that's in South Africa. And that's not because it's South Africa. It's the same way people are worried about having a software company that's in India when there was a big wave of Indian outsourcing to India, or the Philippines, or anywhere else. So people's perceptions are that things will go wrong with software. And I need to call somebody 24/7 so that my warehouse that I just automated it didn't shut down completely. Yeah. Because of a power outage or something went wrong, right? So if you've added a layer of concern, then you have to design a solution that alleviates the concern. Sure. So that either that's an office, an address, a 24/7, right? Remember, that's now called Liquid Web, but Rackspace, the cloud hosting service, made an entire business out of what they branded themselves as fanatical support. I have a client that I work with in the past that does restoration when for offices that have had floods, fires, things like that. And they have a 3-2-1 guarantee. They answer the phone in 3 rings. Somebody will be there in 2 hours, and they'll have a proposal and ready to start work in a day, right? Very clear, very simple, and a promise that they can keep. So if you can alleviate their concerns around that fear, then the marketing message just becomes the same. And then your focus is, and then I don't know if this has to be by state, but it could be if it was just to make it more manageable. The question isn't what state are they in terms of geographic. It's what state is their warehouse in. You're still trying to still trying to agitate people in a positive way to say you've been running your warehouse this way all the time, and it's not allowing your business to be where you want it to be. And so who are those people? What industries are they in? Are they in e-commerce? Or are you having a tremendous amount of success in the lumber market? Where are people likely to have ignored automating their warehouses? And then how do I properly start to seed in their mind that there's a different future for them?
Great. Okay.
So basically it's Texas, is what you're saying.
Listen,
just because you want to start there.
The difference in the United States is that you could pick a populated state, especially ones near, the ones near the coasts are large, have large shipping warehouses for international trade. The states through the middle of the country are distribution points for trucking and train. And so you just have to, but the large distribution warehouses have the most sophisticated warehouse systems.
Correct.
So you want to be, they're not going to be your customer.
Well, it's really interesting because, if you look at Amazon, for example, Amazon sells a huge amount. They've got massive warehouses and they distribute. That's not where the problem is. That's not our customer. Our customer is the guy who sells the pots that go to Amazon. And,
That's right.
and he has a small range of products. He's got a small warehouse, and he ships his products to Amazon. Now, he needs a warehouse system. And that's really my target. And it's a case of saying, how do I get to him? And if he's got a traceability
so that's not
requirement.
State specific. That's not where that's not geographic specific. I would look at industries where you've had success, because you'd give people will want to have some comfort that you understand their business, even if a warehouse is a warehouse is a warehouse.
Yeah.
If you can look across your existing client base and say, we've got this many people in the lumber business, we've got this many people in whatever those buckets are.
Yeah.
Start with where you can say, we have tremendous success and knowledge about the X industry. And we know exactly all the idiosyncrasies, because they're going to think that everything about their business is unique, even if it isn't. And we know everything about it. And then you can also get authority in having the customers that are in that space give you testimonials that say, we've been in the lumber business for 15 years, and this completely transformed our warehouse. And it's done. And then you help them give you the proof, because you want to keep hitting those notes. So you want your testimonials to say, my inventory shrunk and freed up cash flow. Our customers grow, and we've been able to grow our revenue by 40%, right? Sure. Just keep banging those points. More efficiency, lower inventory, happier customers, and increased revenue. And then you can use social tools and LinkedIn and Facebook and all those things to start to say, okay, well, who are the players in the lumber business here? Who's a smaller size company in the lumber business who's likely not automated, that I can start to seed this conversation?
Right. That targeting, have you got any tips as to what is the best platform? Where should we be looking? I mean, I'm not a fan of Facebook at all, but certainly LinkedIn is great. We get a lot of traction with Google AdWords, and I suppose more targeted towards those industries that we're targeting would probably help.
So, my knowledge around this is that Google AdWords will work when somebody has a problem. So you're going to pick up people that have realized that they have a problem and go to Google and say, I need a new warehouse management system.
Right.
That's why you're going to pay so much for the click.
And we're doing well on it. Yeah.
Right. So then the next level is what we're talking about, was how do you agitate? Right. And so if you identify an industry and you identify a rough size of business, and you know the title of the person that you're going after, then using LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and then reach out and try a lot of different things. But the goal is to first, LinkedIn will be good for you identifying, you doing a search like that across the different industries that you're working with in the United States is going to give you 5,000 to 10,000 leads.
Yeah.
Boom.
And then it's a question of narrowing them down and saying, okay, I need to get across to them. And again, we're just brainstorming here, but it could be that you send out a survey to them saying that you're working on a research report about optimizing warehouses, and could you answer 5 questions for us? And everyone who answers, we're going to donate to a specific charity. And that they'll be the first person to receive a copy of the report way ahead of the rest of the market.
Sure.
So Howard, sorry, mate, just to jump in here. Obviously LinkedIn is a really great tool, right? I mean, hence why it exists. But so if you picked if you knew the title and you knew the industry of the guys or women that you're trying to go after.
And they also will show you the number of employees, because you don't want to go to somebody who's got 500 warehouse employees.
So you've identified a prospect list, essentially. Yeah. When I had lunch with you in New York, Howard, about 3 weeks ago, you shared with me quite a clever process that you use for your own business, specifically on LinkedIn, using Sales Navigator. And I was wondering whether you would just be so kind as to kind of share with us a little bit more about what that process is, why it works, why it's different. Because, the thing with LinkedIn, right, is that you're being sold to all the time. I mean, how many Indian this and that and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, it sucks. And the way that people sell on LinkedIn is horrific. Okay. And so your process just seemed to fundamentally disrupt that kind of status quo. So how can Craig kind of use Sales Navigator after he's identified that prospect list What is the kind of 3-step process that he could potentially use?
So rather than, yes, I mean, I get all those LinkedIn requests too, but the idea of that is that it's like somebody walking into a bar and asking you to marry them, right? It's just all out. Their first message is in complete pitch, right? So the goal here is to create a conversation with somebody. So LinkedIn will let you connect immediately and send a connection request without a problem to your second and third degree connections. So when you run the Sales Navigator list, I'll pull up people and for now, I just pull up second degree connections, and then I pick industries that I've worked with. And then I just send a simple request. We know somebody in common, and I thought there'd be value in us connecting. They'll go check out your bio. They'll learn a little bit about that. And when they connect with you, rather than hitting them with a sales hammer, I put a paperback copy of my book in the mail with a handwritten note that just says, "Great to connect with you on LinkedIn. I thought you'd get some value out of my book." Because I know that if somebody reads my book and it resonates with them, we're likely to have a more interesting conversation. And if it doesn't, then everybody saved themselves a lot of time. And so your goal on there is to just see how you can start to have a conversation and build a relationship. People that, can you give them recommendations? Can you give them something of value? You have to, pay into the bank account that you just opened with them before you withdraw. But I think if they go to your LinkedIn profile, which is what they'll do when they get that connection request, and your profile is riddled with "I do this and we do this and we," they're not necessarily going to see themselves in that. But if you change your profile, knowing that it's now become a little bit of a website for people who are checking you out, to talk about all the kinds of things that we just talked about. Too many companies are managing their warehouses on a pad and paper. They're not optimizing their inventory. They're losing revenue and cash flow by holding too much inventory. Their customers, they can't tell their customers where things are. They don't know where things are. But they think that running software, putting software in the warehouse is going to cripple their operations and take 6 months to learn and to customize and all of that. And they're wrong. And then you say, our software does this, this, and this, and we get it installed within 7 days, and everybody's using it within 2 weeks. And our clients enjoy this and this, and even stick a client testimonial there. Who cares? It's your page.
Sure.
They're more likely to not only connect with you, but understand, you've now just seeded some ideas in their head of what their warehouse operation could look like. And if they don't think they need you because they have it already, then they're just going to skip and they won't connect with you.
Sure. It's cold calling without the cold.
Right. So here, and the other little tool that somebody taught me that's really quite clever is there's a tool called Linked Helper. I think it's linkedhelper.com. It's a Chrome extension.
May I just Google it?
That sits and runs inside of LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And what it does is pulls the saved searches out of, you've created a search in Sales Navigator. So now we're getting to really tactical here. It pulls the search in. You tell it what that little intro message is going to be on your connection request. And it has wildcards for the person's name and their company name. So you could say, "Hi, Craig. We're second degree connections and I've worked a lot in your industry. Would love to just be connected and see how we can help each other." And then you let this thing just run. And the software scrolls through goes to somebody's page, scrolls down, opens up their profile, waits a random amount of seconds, opens up the invite request, pops in the message, waits another random bunch of seconds, and then sends it out. Waits a random bunch of seconds and moves on to the next contact. And will only send out connection requests to whatever the limits are, the current known limits of what LinkedIn allows you to do in a day. And you just let it run. And it'll send out a couple of hundred connection requests in a day or whatever. There's limits that LinkedIn puts on it, so it knows that. and you just let it run. And when you get the notification that somebody now has connected with you, then you can start your process of, okay, now this is somebody who's now met with me. You'll often notice that they visited your page, and rather than think about how do I turn this person into a customer by tomorrow, how can I help this guy with some value? How can I help this woman figure something out that they don't know already? How can I start a conversation? There's a chapter in my book that I often forget about, that I am reminded of now, which is called Relationships, Not Sales. That the more you focus on just paying it forward and building a relationship with somebody, sales is not going to feel like sales anymore. And so if you treat LinkedIn or anything that way, and approach everything and stop yourself from selling as long as you can, they know what you do. They know why you reached out. They saw your page and know what you do. The more you can resist the urge and just say, how do I build a relationship with this person? How can I ask them what they need? How can I help them? Is there somebody I can introduce them to? Can I pay into this account a bit? The sales will come.
Do you want to make any comments?
No, I just love it. Yeah, you're right. You know, if I think back to the sales process over the last sort of 8 years, that's exactly it. It's people that you have relationships with. It's people that you build traction with, and very seldom is it actually a hard sell. It's often a case of walking through their warehouse with them. By the time you get to physically meet, you're walking through the warehouse with them, looking at the opportunities to improve and to help them.
So right. Yeah. So what you want to do now to scale from 40 to 10,000 is to try to map out that ideal process, that sales process, from first call to conversation to coffee, all the way to signing, and think about how to scale that.
Sure.
Right? How do I automate and create without losing all the magic moments? How do I create efficiency around that so I actually could have 100 of those conversations and consultations a week or a month versus being able to have 10 now? How? And then it's just going to run its way all the way down the line. And if I do that, what do I need to do operationally to be able to install 100 clients in a month? What do I need to be able to do to train 100 clients in a month?
Sure. And
that's just going to run down that's going to turn into your roadmap of where you're going to need to be, because you're going to go from doing, I'm just making this up, but 2 a month to then 10 a month to then 30 a month to then 60 a month.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have a sales force, and they need to be trained on this process as well. You know, really, I can introduce the relationships, but at the end of the day, I need other people to execute as well if I want the scale that you're talking about. Yeah.
But I think if you, my experience is if you can tell salespeople for a certain period of time to not have to hit quotas and bend over backwards and do everything they can to make a sale, and just say spend the next number of months just paying into the account, building relationships, even with people that are not necessarily going to be clients, but they could be great referral sources. Pay in. The payback is if you can have the patience and the diligence around just building relationships and not focusing on the sales explode. The year that I switched this years ago, when I was doing more website strategy and things like that, and I only focused on building relationships, sales doubled.
Howard, just a question from my side. So you mentioned that, you know, as South African companies with the ambition to expand into America, with that ambition comes an additional layer of complexity, right? So that is basically removing the risk of dealing with a company that has an office in a country that's not where you're trying to activate a new market. Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're in the situation where, okay, we work out what our sales process is. Now we need to scale that thing. We mobilize our sales team here. And now we're in the business of, well, our key focus here is step one, build relationships, right? Demonstrate some value, whatever the case is. what constraints do you have when you're not physically able to go and shake hands and have a coffee? And I find that to be quite a big deal, because all business that I closed is always done face to face. Even with our clients in New York, that was done off a personal relationship before it was done off like a, hey man, here's my book. It's called Secrets of Scale, and this is what we scale, and whatever the case is. And we're in the business of brand building and scaling up and whatever. And so you send them that book, and now the guy's sitting in Austin, Texas. I mean, now he's like, cool, let's go for a coffee. And you're like, well, yeah, about that. Can you rock onto my Zoom call?
Skype meetings.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not personal enough. It's like, I know
you're gonna give something up there. And so the innovation that you need to have is how to replicate it. I just, as you say that, I'm reminded of, and this is an old story, but when Amazon was created, when it was just books, I remember Jeff Bezos talking about, he realized that as much as he was going to win on selection, that no bookstore was going to be able to have the selection that he was going to have. He needed to do things that remove the nice part of somebody standing in a bookstore and flipping through a book and looking at the back and holding it in their hand and reading the first few pages. And so he's just started to solve against that problem. So there's that look inside thing. Is if you can download the first chapter. There's reviews, right? So the reviews were born out of him trying to solve that problem. So you need to think about all the things that they're going to miss out on with a Zoom call, but there's a lot more business that happens. People don't have the time to grab coffee anymore. If you're selling a piece of software that requires you to be there to do a site survey, you're putting in $1 million piece of, Oracle or SAP software, you're going to have to be there. You're going to have days of meetings where you're meeting with every department to understand their unique needs and all of that stuff. If you stick to companies that don't have a system to speak of, so they don't have all kinds of things that you're porting over, and you're really putting in their first warehouse management system, and you're making it easy, then I think you can probably cover a lot with a Zoom call and some really well thought out online demos. Look at Salesforce.com. Now that's a lower price, but not that cheap. Has nobody. Everything is virtual. There's no Salesforce that is knocking on doors and showing up at places. Everything is done through an initial call to qualify you. They turn you then over to a sales rep who does a full demo. Then they work out pricing for you, and then they switch you over to getting trained. Never does anybody. And if you have a 5 or 10 person company, a full Salesforce install is going to cost you $5,000-$6,000 a month. So it's not cheap software. And they do it all virtually, but they do it in ways with people who are really great on the phone, who really know the product, who know what questions to ask, and nobody comes to visit them. And they scale as a result of that, right? They've been able to scale because they don't have to have people waiting for appointments and sitting in people's offices setting up demos.
I totally agree. Our site in the States was done that way. They found us online, and everything was done up to signing and even first payment before we got onto a plane. And it's workable. You just have to have the right people.
Yeah.
And
I think your bigger hurdle here is going to be, if I pick up the phone at 7:00 in the morning or at 9:00 at night, is somebody who's going to really be able to fix the problem.
Oh, we don't have that problem.
Knock it off the phone till it's fixed.
Yeah, we don't have that problem.
That's because that's their fear. Their fear is that they're shut down. Yeah. Their fear is that when the software goes down, who do I call? And you're 7 hours ahead of the East Coast, much less the West Coast. If you can show them how it's better than if they called down the street.
Yeah, well, we've already done it, and that's what makes me excited by it, because the guys in the States, if they give me a call at 4:00 in the afternoon and say they've got a problem, by the time they get back to work in the morning, it's solved. and because we've been working on it while they've been sleeping.
Right. So you have to turn the time. You definitely turn the time change into an advantage. And and if you had enough business in the United States, you could have people run
absolutely
through the night.
But even that, it's really easy for us to solve that problem. So I'm not concerned about the support side.
I think that's your bigger hurdle. And then just thinking through, how do I make the online demo experience great?
Yeah.
Cool. Craig, any final comments from you?
It's just there's real value. I'm sort of going. I'm leaving for Cape Town this evening, and I'm thinking, right, I know what I'm doing for the next 3 weeks. Christmas Eve.
Listen, this is just a first phone call. We sort of compacted what I do with clients over the course of a number of conversations. But if nothing else, if you just start thinking about that shift of not just reaching people with pain, but actually helping them create understanding and getting excited about the future that you could bring. The features of your product and all of that will be the tail end of your conversation.
Yeah. Howard, fantastic. Yeah, thank you.
So Howard, thanks so much, dude. It's been awesome. I've even learned again stuff from you. It's really frustrating.
And Matt's now over a barrel because there's a whole marketing strategy that we're going to have to beef up again.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Thanks.
all right. He knows what to do now.
See, this is my whole strategy the whole time, was to get Howard to say rad shit, to then retain you as a client, and then scale up next year. So, but Howard, honestly, mate, it's really, really awesome to connect again. Where can guys connect with you? Should they be listening to this conversation going, this is definitely something I want to get from Howard?
Easiest way is just to go to howardmann.com and there's a contact form and you can get right at me.
That's man with 2 N's.
That's man with 2 N's. All with howardmann, MANN.com.
Awesome. Guys, thanks so much. What a great show. Really appreciate it, Craig, for being part of this innovative experience on the Matt Brown Show. Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.